Good morning, everyone, and good morning, Dad.
Good morning.
Hello. Hello. We're here on our live stream. It is Friday, October the 13th. Friday the 13th. That didn't even occur to me. There we go.
Yeah. Friday the 13th.
We should script this one day.
Yeah, I know. Be good thinking, wouldn't it?
Yeah, a little rehearsal. Yeah, well, thanks for joining us. We've got a couple interesting topics. We're going to do, just as usual, a quick market review. Talk about some special case sales, estate sales, foreclosures, those types of things, and then a little bit about RECA and what they're doing through Sano. So why don't we do a quick touch on the market review? So we're just going to try and share a screen here. This is new technology again. So this is the daily housing summary that we're going to share, available from the Calgary Real Estate Board. So you can see on there that let's just move that window a little bit. You can see that the sales September 2022 to 2023 are up 28%. October numbers are on the right-hand side. Because we're only partway through, it's maybe not a complete picture yet. So we'll maybe focus on the September numbers. Active listings down 24%. So this is a slight change from previous months. I think we've seen sales up 40% and listings down 30%. So it seems like a little bit of easing, which is a good sign. Total active listings for October 2023, 3,486. Still relatively low number for a city with a population of Calgary. So market is still tight. A little bit of easing, some inventory sitting around. That's anything anecdotal that you guys want to add on the market snapshot here?
I think for me, it's to your point, Dan, the stuff that is sitting around is stuff that maybe a few months ago was not good, but there was really just nothing else, and people were really on the hunt for a property. Now I think the maybe some of that hunting is less aggressive, possibly because maybe some of the new interest rates have kicked in. So the rate hold that folks had at 2, 3, 4, 5% have gone away now, and they're in the higher, a more expensive mortgage approval. And so maybe they're backing off and taking a step back. So I think that's possibly why some of the sales have slowed down just a little bit. But I'd say as well, the good stuff, the hot properties are still pretty hot. And if it's a good listing in a desirable area and it's priced well, if it's on the nose, then that's going to sell. And it seems like it's still going to sell with competing interest.
Yeah. Excellent.
I read an interesting piece the other day in one of the real estate columns from the U.S., I guess. And it brought up a curious point that I reflected on. It's like when you'll see a stall in the market when interest rates, if the public perceives that interest rates are starting to come down, or going to start to decline, then you'll see a pause in buying because then they'll be waiting for they'll hold off on the market.
Mm-hmm.
And I just sort of was thinking about that in light of what's happening right now. If this pause is reflective of that, I just wonder about that. I don't know. Yeah. I'm hopeful that these things will start to come down, that interest rates will come down, but I'm not sure that we have any definitive indication of that right yet. I think probably we're going to plateau for a little while, or at least that's what everyone has told me. That's what all the markets indicate, the bond market and all that. So I don't know. It could be that people are either there's a headwind on, just the interest rates, and so people that are getting in. There's certainly a lot of people coming from. There's a lot of immigration. We've been getting. Oh my gosh! I think the number is 50,000 quarterly into the province of Alberta. Like,
Yeah.
that's a lot. That's a massive amount. 200,000 people.
Yeah, I think I need to understand exactly how many of those people are coming to Calgary, because I think that on a quarterly or an annual basis, that number, less the housing starts that we are seeing, and whatever other rental properties are coming up as well, is really what seems to be driving the housing challenges we're facing in Calgary right now. And I think that just going back to your point, Dan, with the stats, the easing in the sales and the slight increase in the listings, it's not enough to narrow the gap that has been created over the last year and a half, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, the easing is not a move into buyer's market territory. It's slightly less of a seller's market.
Yeah,
is how you might characterize it. So
No, and the fact is, the fact is that all the indications are that it's going to be, with that amount of immigration, it's going to be very difficult to even catch up. Like,
it's going to be very
for all of the builders, there's no way that they can. We just don't have enough product. They couldn't even start that many product.
Yeah,
that much product.
And a compounding factor might be looking forward to where interest rates might go. I think that we're hearing from some mortgage brokers that they think this is it. In a year's time, the rate will be lower, and so when people have more buying power, that's just going to add a little fuel to the fire, I think. So I think here in Alberta, we're not going to see an easing in the market. In other places in the U.S., in Eastern and Western Canada, real estate is tough right now.
Slowed down a lot.
Slowed down quite a bit, but it hasn't been the case here in Alberta, and it doesn't look like that's going to be the case here for quite some time. So,
Pretty optimistic. I think the call is for at least 2 years of good weather.
Yeah. Speaking of optimism, Dad, you were at a forum this week, a real estate forum. Is that what it was called?
Yeah, the Calgary Real Estate Forum, and that really, I just, everything there echoed my comments earlier. Big push. Well, so the hottest market is multifamily, purpose-built rentals, and almost every, a lot of the major REITs were there, big developers. They were very bullish on residential in Calgary, multi-res. In fact, they would, the sentiment was, yeah, we do any kind of multi-res project in Calgary.
Yeah.
The lenders said the same thing. They said, they're depending if they had there's good, strong people behind it. They're glad to lend on it. Even if, they have they're giving it some latitude if the proponents are strong that are behind it. And probably second in line was retail is going to be pretty strong. Industrial as well, although easing off a little bit. And then office. There's just no way you can win that beauty contest for the next 2 years. And they keep talking about these office conversions, which I'm sorry, I've looked at those things every which way. Maybe some people are making them work. I doubt they are, but I don't know. I think it's just how do you take something that was purpose-built as an office and convert it, knowing what at least I know about construction, how do you convert those buildings into residential buildings that actually function, that perform, the way that they should
I think that if I recall correctly, there was some funding that was maybe helping those projects make sense for people because they. I think you're right, Dad. The way that an office is laid out is not the way that a residential building is laid out, and where bathrooms go and where kitchens go and where elevators are and where windows are and bedrooms doesn't.
Yeah.
It's not that kind of thing.
You just reminded me of a point that was made yesterday as well, that resonated with me, is that you can throw money at these things, and you can throw money at residential, So if we really want to, you know, increase the density and increase the amount of housing, you can throw money at it and you can build bad product. And often that's all it does, is it incents poor product. I think that's what the office conversions did. Yeah, like, you know, you have to build the framework, you know, with principles in mind and with a sense of you know, strategic thinking. So it's the kind of thinking, it's what I highlight when we're at the real estate council. You know, the rules that you put in place shape the industry, and the incentives that you put in place around the building industry will shape, you know, what we're going to be living in for, you know, 10 years down the road. So let's not be frivolous about it, and let's not just throw money at projects, you know, willy-nilly. So I'm a little skeptical of that. Harkening back to the office conversions, I think, you know, they threw money at that where they shouldn't.
I was listening to a podcast about office conversions last week, and it was interesting. They focused on New York, where there's been some success. And what they've done there in some cases is, like, let's say you take a floor plate of 10,000 square feet. The center of that floor plate is the least valuable, right? I mean, there's no windows. And so they're putting common spaces there, amenity spaces in the center of the building, and using the outside for living space. In some cases, they're coring out the center, adding a shaft, like taking, I don't know, 5% of each floor plate out of the center and adding it to the top of the building where it's the most value.
I think a lot of those spaces too, like there's some of those buildings, it's a shared kitchen, or so you have your private bedroom, but then you have a shared kitchen and maybe a shared bathroom, and some of those more dense spaces. I'm not sure if Calgary is quite dense enough to need the shared facilities in that way, but that's probably the way you make it work, is you put a kitchen for however many people on the inside, and then you have your living, like a bedroom and a living space out where a window is.
Yeah. So,
I'm curious what vintage of buildings they were retrofitting. You know, are they, like in New York, are they old heritage buildings?
Yeah. Well, New York has some bylaws that prohibit redevelopment of newer buildings, I understand. So I think the newest ones that they could do were like 1993 or something like that. So I have to reference that. But yeah, there was some ordinances in New York that dictated basically what buildings could be revamped. But anyways, it's an interesting topic, and yeah, we probably need to look abroad for a solution. I don't know that there's been a Calgary grown solution yet that I've seen successful. Maybe it's in the pipeline.
Yeah, curious. It brings. Okay, this is a little bit of a tangent, but you know, we retrofitted the steam boiler at the Glenwood Manor the other day, which is a heritage building, pretty prominent heritage building, right at the foot of the Peace Bridge. And how many steam boilers are there in Calgary? Well, not many. Maybe a couple. And so we had to go to all these source the intel from all these data and these old plumbers from New York. And so that's what we were up to at Glenwood last month, and just finished that just in time for the cold weather to hit. So fingers crossed. We hope that the boilers at the Glenwood will be banging a little less and functioning a little more efficiently.
Right.
And thanks to New York old buildings and plumbers for their intelligence.
Yeah,
I was on the phone with them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I guess the next topic we were going to hit was some of the less conventional types of sales that we run across, only because it's a little bit topical for us right now. We have an estate sale that we're dealing with where, thankfully, the sellers came to us with probate already in hand, so probate had been granted, and that often facilitates those estate sales. With, in some cases, you can be waiting for probate, or even the limited grant of probate when you have a sale, for weeks or months. But some of the other things, I guess, at least just quickly for an estate sale, I mean, if it's an older house, you definitely want to make sure that you get an RPR an updated real property report, because sometimes, as in this case, it's the original owner, and there's nothing. There's very little in terms of assets and things that are required in the contract to make the sale go through and get finished up. So that's some of the stuff that we've ordered. Just clearing the house out, making sure that it's the personal effects of the person who's maybe no longer with us have been cleared out and distributed amongst the family.
And that's no small job. We've seen this take months and rightly so, but it's I think if you're faced with the task of clearing out a house, it's not easy. There's a lot of work that goes into that, so that's something that could take time.
Yeah. Anything else, Dad, from you that you've seen as something to clear the way or remove obstacles when you're dealing with an estate sale?
Yeah, don't underestimate the amount of time that it takes to get that stuff done. And the least of that is, the emotional burden that comes with that, when you're clearing out stuff. I've witnessed it. We've watched it, occur in real time. They start, there could be maybe just a few boxes of stuff, and you start unpacking it, and the memories start flooding back, and they sit there, and then it's like, and they can't get rid of them, and it really is a challenge. So grant yourself enough time to deal with all of that when you're processing that kind of a sale, for sure.
Yeah, and maybe just to touch on the emotional side of things as well, for any real estate agents that might be tuning in, I think making sure you're dealing with the executor of the estate, but also knowing what might be going on behind the scenes. So if you're dealing with an executor, or if there's co-executors, understand as well that they have the authority to make the decision for the estate, but they still might need to talk to 2, 3, 4 siblings.
They might not be the only decision maker,
and in-laws, and they bear the weight of the decisions that they are making, and not everyone's always happy with those decisions. And so it can be, I mean, especially when there's an estate sale, and the property is appreciated in value beyond the expectations of what they originally had hoped it might be. Sometimes there's a bit of a cash grab, and you want to make sure that the expectations are set early, and no one gets dollar signs in their eyes thinking that there's going to be a real a lottery, I guess.
That never happens. Oh, that's just no, that happens. That happens more often than we like to remember.
Yeah, I think we'd all like to believe that everyone's just, they're moving on, and they're dealing with whatever they're dealing with, what they have to deal with, and that there's not negative intentions or like motivations behind it. But sometimes that's the case, and you have to just make sure that agents, you're aware of that, and that you are just, again, setting expectations appropriately. So,
yeah, you mentioned a key thing, co-executors. Sometimes you might be sort of dealing with one individual when there's, I'd have to remember the term, it's like joint executors, or if they could, like, sometimes you can make the decision on your own, either one, or they both need to agree on a decision. So just understanding what that matrix looks like and who's involved is important. Make sure you have those documents in hand, and
a copy of the page, the page of the will.
Yeah, and understand it. So that could be something that comes back to bite. So
yeah, all good points. Yeah, I don't have anything else to add to that. I think mostly, the one thing I will add is that as agents, remember that the greater part of your job is to really have empathy for the situation. It's not just a sales position. You're there to help the family move through their emotional trauma, and have empathy for their situation and understanding, and that's a large part of our job.
Yeah. You know, often we get to partake in some very happy moments for people, buying houses, you know, some very sort of happy changes in life that precipitates a purchase or a sale. Um, and this is this is one situation where it's not always that. And so it's an opportunity as agents to remind ourselves that this is a very, it's a
Pretty human thing.
a very human thing to go through. And like you said, Dad, just have some empathy for everybody involved in the process. So.
Yeah. Good points.
I am personally less experienced in foreclosures or bank sales. I don't know if do either of you two want to touch on that process, or I mean either for consumers or for agents, and how you get involved in a bank sale or some sort of a court ordered sale.
It's been a little while since I've had to be involved with a court ordered sale, but if I recall the process, the lawyers that handle the court ordered sales, I believe they're first charged with trying to get a sale outside of organized real estate, at least in Alberta. And so oftentimes there's a very short duration of like a listing on Kijiji for foreclosed properties. And I think they do that mostly as a token. I don't know that they get a lot of uptake on that, but they do that as sort of their token attempt, because it's a challenging process. And for an individual to approach a lawyer to try and buy something, I mean, I think most people need some guidance and support. And so it's often then brought to organized real estate, listed with a realtor, put on the MLS, and then sold. And so it's the process of selling it from there can vary.
And that's, just to be clear, and I'm not sure this myself, but that process is when the property is being foreclosed on and going through the courts. Once it's been foreclosed, then it typically goes back to whoever the mortgage holder was. And then it is, in that case, say a bank or a private lender who is then selling it through an agent.
That's right. Yeah. And often we'll have a lawyer stick on with the process. Sorry, Dad, you were going to say?
Yeah, I think it happens in tandem, Daniel. The real estate agent who's assigned by the court is required to list it on Kijiji as well as listed on the MLS. So I think that happens in tandem.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. There's multiple channels of.
Yeah, we haven't had to do it for a while, although we are, and we're on the other side of the foreclosure right now in British Columbia. So that's an interesting process. We happen to have been on all sides of these foreclosures over the years. But right now.
Yeah, except being foreclosed on, I should say that.
Right.
Yeah, and the challenge, the court needs to prove that they're getting full value for the property. So all of these gymnastics happen just to ensure that the fellow that's being foreclosed on, that the court has done its utmost to ensure that it's gotten full value for the property. You know, they've exhausted every channel to ensure that they've got full value, and that the mortgage holder, I mean, just for numbers' sake, it's $1 million property. The mortgage holder has, $500,000 first mortgage. He forecloses and he takes it for $500,000. Well, the courts want to ensure that the additional equity, if it's worth $700,000 or $800,000 or $900,000, is given back to the owner. And so that's the process. They want to make sure that there's, that they've exhausted every channel to get all the equity out of it, but not, I mean, only within the process of due structure, within the structure of due process. I said that backwards. So they don't want to burden the process, but they have these kind of guideposts in place to do that. So usually it's pretty expedient. And
I think maybe it's a good point that to touch on as well is that a lot of people consumers have the sense that foreclosures are smoking deals and you can pick up really cheap property through a foreclosure process. And you sometimes can, although that's often associated with greater risk, because you can't, you can't include any conditions on a foreclosure sale. It has to be an unconditional offer. There are also a lot of the reps and warranties struck out of any kind of a purchase contract because you can't sue the court. And so if there's something dramatically wrong with the property when you take possession, there's no recourse.
Mhm.
And I don't think we've had it happen, but there are the horror stories about either tenants or former owners moving out of a property that pour cement down drains and take all the lights and the door handles and like whatever else, leave the property as just really a shell. And if you think you got a smoking deal on a property like that, maybe you walk into nothing but sticks. So,
well, I do remember, you guys wouldn't, but I do remember, it was us selling properties for CMHC and for Alberta, which AMHC, where we had keys to a block of properties. And before I was in real estate, we were actually renovating some of them. So we would go in and these properties, they would have bathtubs removed. In one case, they actually had the electrical panel removed. I don't know how they actually removed the electrical panel and sold it. So when they were giving them back to the bank in foreclosure, they took everything they could out of the property, doors, bathtubs, you name it. So yeah, you have to be very careful and know what you're buying. Usually you get what you pay for in those, to your point, Michael, that you get what you pay for. There's not often great smoking deals unless you really know the property, the history of the property, and it's something that's that would be frightening for another buyer to pick up unconditionally.
mm-hmm.
They don't know the history and you do. Perhaps there's an opportunity there for you to gain advantage and maybe get it at a good price, because everybody else would be too afraid to pick it up at that price, right? So that's the only scenario that I could think of where, take a run at it.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that it's not like a first-time home buyer kind of a
no
scenario.
No. Yeah, they'd have to be
Pretty savvy,
I think, to approach that process.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think what else were we going to cover? I think those are some of the main topics. The only thing I was going to maybe touch on is that the fall is coming. So maybe ask the both of you if there's anything about being in or around Calgary that you particularly appreciate for fall and what the fall brings, what you like to go do.
No. No, I mean, fall for me, for the last number of years, it's been back to school, and so there's not really much opportunity to get out and do a whole lot. Mm-hmm. This year we got to experience some fall colors, some nice weather. The park in front of my house has some large trees, so we could watch those turn. Yeah, it was a nice fall. And this week it's been a little more gray and sort of traditional Calgary fall / winter feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, I can mirror those comments. This year it seems that the leaves will stay on the trees a little bit longer, so we get the colors are a bit more vibrant and there for a longer period. What I like to do this time of year is like take a drive out, take the car out for a drive to Bragg Creek or to Banff or something like that, just to kind of experience those in full all splendor, But
yeah, I remember those drives as a kid getting back.
I hope I didn't frighten you.
No, it didn't. I was talking to my own kids about them, and I think the only thing I found strange about them is that sometimes we would often get out, but sometimes we didn't get out. Sometimes we just go for a drive and then come back. It was just a loop. Even out of the car. But,
well, that was the experience, Jim.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is that time of year.
Right. Well, that's about a half an hour for us, and I know that I've got a few things I've got to get done before possession later today, and then a few other appointments. So if there's anything else that you guys wanted to touch on or raise,
that's it for me.
Yeah. Happy fall.
Yeah, happy fall, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Mahmood, thanks for making a comment again on the live stream. Always nice to see you. And we'll see you all in a couple of weeks.
Okay,
All
yeah,
right,
take
great.
care.
Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks, everyone. All right.
In the stream. We're still live.